Subarus do launch really well.
That goes hard, man.
It goes hard. I mean, and the problem is though, if you do that too many times, you are tempting fate, and it's very highly likely you're going to break something.
Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. We are in Martin's STI today.
Yep, the WRX is driving very, very nicely.
The two-door, but what's the main Subaru meme we always see about WRXs, Martin?
Well, there's two, but one that makes the most sense to me is
Vaping.
broken gearboxes.
And that one.
Not us.
No,
Not
not
today.
us. Because, what are we going to do, Martin?
We are going to put a 6-speed in this STI WRX.
Luckily for me, today I've got some help coming to get this done, and the hoist will make it a whole lot quicker. First up, I'm going to get the wheels off and out of the way. I'm also going to let the various fluids drain and then remove the entire exhaust from back to front. Spraying the exhaust bolts with some WD-40 penetrant gives me better odds of being able to undo them without a fight. The drive shaft nuts are often quite tight, but in this case, a rattle gun was able to remove them with the help of a big, fully charged battery. I'm going to loosen the tail shaft and drain the diff while I'm under here as well.
Our mate Benny's offered to give us a hand. He's a Subaru specialist and he knows his way around a 6-speed swap. We're going to start on the engine bay while Marty strips the inside of the car. The centre console needs to come out so we can remove the shifter and handbrake. And in the engine bay, everything covering the top of the gearbox needs to be removed. WRXs run a top-mounted intercooler that sits underneath their famous bonnet scoop. Arguments have raged for decades about how well they work versus a front-mount intercooler, but one thing's for certain, they're in the way of getting the gearbox out. The bell housing bolts that hold the engine and gearbox together are underneath it, as is the starter motor, clutch and pitch mount, which all need to be disconnected. The clutch fork is what converts the movement of the pedal to back and forth movement on the clutch throwout bearing. It sits on a big metal rod which needs to be removed from the side of the gearbox. The turbo dump pipe bolts need to come off, and from this point most of the action happens underneath the car.
The dump pipe that's currently on the back of the turbo needs to be removed and replaced with one that clears the bigger 6-speed box. With the exhaust and drive shafts out of the way, we can loosen the lower bell housing bolts. The 6-speed swap uses the gearbox, drive shafts, hubs, tail shaft, shifter and rear diff, along with a variety of sensors and wiring. It's a big swap, but luckily little to no fabrication is required to make it all work. With plenty of room around the gearbox cleared up, we can begin the process of dropping it out. A gearbox jack makes this a much easier and safer exercise as it can support the weight of the gearbox while we undo the rest of the bolts. With some levering and jiggling of the box, it's pulled away from the back of the engine and can be lowered onto the floor. The old clutch and flywheel are coming off the engine, as this is the best time to replace them. It's also a good time to check the condition of your rear main seal.
The gearbox is out. The hubs and brakes are next on the list, the steering arms are knocked out, the brake line's disconnected, then the hubs can be unbolted from the arms that they hang from and removed from the car. All right, so it's been a couple of hours working on the WRX STI, and this is everything that's come out of it so far. Now, luckily, we're not in North America or Europe or Japan or places where there's super, super salty roads, and that means that the car didn't fight us to release its goodness, or in this case, the badness. So over here, we've got R160 diff has come out. This here is the STI 5-speed, which I understand is some fan-doogled, fancy Subaru people care about them. I don't, but apparently people do.
4.4 gear ratio. It's the fancy, like, good for going fast.
Yeah. It's good for like 230, 20, 40 kilowatts.
Benny said they break around that point if you're being silly with them. But that's the thing. These things always had a bad reputation. Subaru 5-speeds, as we know from my experience, which looked a little bit like this.
Oh, that does not sound good.
We know that they do break.
Yes, they do. So that's why it's gone. So that's gone, and we're replacing it with...
This is a 2006 STI long ratio 6-speed. The other thing you'll notice is that the reason that the hubs are sitting here is they're also a different stud pattern. So by using this box, which is the best for this application, there's quite a few different ones you can choose, but it's the one that we've chosen for a few reasons. You actually do have to change your PCD. Now, a few people mentioned that the wheels I had on this car, the 18s were too big. Totally agree, were too big, but wheels that had sitting around with good tyres on them ready to go, they were always going to go because when I did a 6-speed swap, I'd have to change wheels too. I found some wheels, and you'll see them soon. But the next thing we have to do now
Don't talk about wheels on the internet, Martin, unless you want an inbox that is bulging at the sides.
So many opinions on wheels.
I put some wheels on my BRZ. Wrong wheels, love the wheels.
Yeah. Best
oh,
fitment,
here's the wheels on my
fitment.
Mini, love them. Don't do that. Be careful of wheels, people.
So this is a common swap when you're chasing power with a Subaru. They always talk about what's the fuse in the car. Well, the fuse is a gearbox. If you've got a really early gearbox, you're going to blow a gear. Then if you don't blow the gearbox, you might blow a tail shaft. We know what that looks like because I've done that also like this.
I think I've just broke Super Grams.
So I've blown up enough Subaru stuff to know that this formula is going to work really well, along with the help of very clever people like Mechanical Stig. Back in the day, you would get a 5-speed like that. You'd put like billet gears in it that were straight cut, so you sound like a V8 supercar, whining all the time, which is good in theory, but it would actually suck to live with. Then these boxes came out, and everyone was like, oh my God, they're stronger or as strong, and they don't whine, and they're a factory part that bolts in. This is going to bolt in.
Because that's like 5, 6, 7 years newer than that technology, right?
Yeah, or Benny was saying this was made like with the help of Porsche.
Right.
As was the EZ30s, like what's in
There's
the
badge action in the box.
Possibly.
That's awesome.
We're going to find out. So more or less bolts in. There's a few funny things with like ABS sensors and certain bolts that are different, but more or less Lego. So that came out pretty quick, and you know, by the end of the day, we should have at least a good amount of this in the car.
It's going to be finished today, people.
Oh, don't say that.
What?
Can't say that.
Isn't it? It might be.
Maybe.
It might be.
Maybe. Well, the car hasn't fought us. It's actually been really agreeable so far. Everything's just worked, which has been a pleasure compared to some of the cars I've dealt with lately. So, this in, we're going to start at the back and work our way forward. So, diff in first, hubs, shafts, brakes. Oh, I've got a brake conversion for it as well, because it's all from the same car. So, this all came out of a wrecked
06 STI. So that means Brembo brakes, massive calipers and discs.
That's a good way of upgrading everything, isn't it?
It really is. It's just donating all its bits to this two-door.
The rear diff is also from the later model STI, as it has to match the gearbox for the all-wheel drive system to work properly. The only change is the rear studs need to be swapped between the two to fit the earlier body. It can then be lifted up into the car, bolted up, and we can get the rear hubs installed as well.
People often swap their hubs to change their stud pattern for better wheel choice or brake availability. Subaru is mostly 5x100 with the exception of STIs, Tribecas and a handful of other models. 5x114.3 is common to many Evos, Nissans, Toyotas and even Fords, so this does open up choices in wheels, but in our case it's more about durability as the hubs and bearings are beefier and can tolerate much more power. The drive shafts can take a little bit of effort to pop past the C-clip and seat into the diff. We just have to make sure the splines are lined up and not force it until we're absolutely sure. Then a few whacks with a mallet on the other end and it should pop in.
While we've got the gearbox out and we're putting in our big 6-speed, perfect time to upgrade the clutch. 6-speed clutches are a bit bigger and now's better time than any. Going to go a bit more extreme. Oh, I just said extreme. Extreme, that's an accident, with this car and put in a twin plate, which I haven't had before. It's part of the reason I'm doing it, and part of the reason is for future power upgrades. It means this gearbox, driveline, clutch will be able to handle whatever we throw at it. So this is a twin plate, which means there is 2 clutch discs in there, not just one. And this is a whole kit, which is pretty cool, which will bolt straight up, designed specifically for the 06 STI 6-speed. Made by Extreme Clutch, which is Australian Clutch Services. They're from Adelaide, and they've got their own like mad R&D facility and stuff down there where they come up with all these things. This is mad because also it comes with a flywheel, so we don't have to get the one that's on there machined or redone. Everything we need comes in this package. Twin plate's a little bit more hectic to install because everything's a bit heavier and bulkier, but the process is more or less the same. Might get a slightly heavier pedal, which is one of the reasons that you might consider going a single plate, but this will hold more power than what the equivalent size single plate will. So we're going to throw it in.
A twin plate clutch can often handle more power and torque than equivalent single plate due to the fact you've increased the surface area and often also the clamping force. You can dive deep into clutch theory wormholes if you like, but something that's common between all clutches is that changing them usually isn't a quick, easy or fun job. Get the best one you can the first time to save lots of time later on. The most commonly reported drawback of a multi-disc clutch is operating noise, so on a quiet daily driver, that may be an issue. But if zero clutch slip and big power is your goal, that's not going to matter a whole lot. Installation is straightforward and similar to a single plate, except that you have to make sure you stack the clutch discs in the correct orientation and keep everything as clean as possible. An alignment tool is included with ours, which makes it much easier. With the clutch installed, we can get the 6-speed gearbox ready to lift up into place and attach it to the back of the engine. The input shaft on the gearbox needs to slide easily into the clutch. If it binds up or hangs, it can damage your clutch or the gearbox itself. A few extra sets of hands makes this much easier, whether you're on a hoist or on your back, but go slow, and if it doesn't feel right, remove and start again. Only once you're sure that the input shaft is engaged properly into the clutch should you start winding bolts in. I'm going to use the tail shaft to get the input shaft to turn, helping the spline seat correctly. Being an agreeable car, it didn't fight us and popped straight in, which is awesome. All that's left to do now is install the remaining bell housing and crossmember bolts and then fit up our front hubs.
I got a 6-speed. I'm so excited.
And we got it all done in a day. I mean, there's a couple of things that are missing, but the actual 6-speed conversion is officially done.
6-speed conversion is done. The gearbox is swapped. It's on there. It's got a brand new twin plate clutch in it. We've got the big fat hubs and drive shafts in the front, the big fat hubs and drive shafts in the back, the R180 diff, this tail shaft thing, and it's pretty much done.
Yeah, and this one here is longer. No, this is shorter because the box is longer,
Yes,
right?
the box is huge.
So that's excellent. You're going to be able to do some high RPM all-wheel drive launches.
Well, you can just take that feeling out of the back of your head all the time when you're driving a WRX where you're just like, oh, I'm going to break, oh, I'm going to break it.
WRX.
I'm going to break it. Except STI with an STI gearbox, and now I won't. So, 6-speed conversion is done. There's a few other things we're going to do. Interesting things actually in terms of customizing those shock absorbers. Benny's got some cool ideas on how we can make those shock absorbers fit because they don't fit factory. And we've got some big brand new brakes to put on as well. So in a future episode of Mighty Car Mods,
it's all fun adventures for next time.
Yeah.
Massive thank you to Benny Mechanical Stig for coming to hang out with us today. Thank you, Martin, for buying more nuggets. This is going to be fast.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be actually fast, which is excellent. So, thank you very much. This is a box. Do you like boxes? Would you like to see inside Cheryl's mystery box? We'll pack the loot. You don't even need to choose it. You just go, give me a discounted box full of loot. We'll pack it for you. A thing's dropping down. Martin, well done.
No, thanks for your help,
Let's go get a Super Duper.
Yeah.
Because it's a beautiful warm day.
Benny,
Thanks,
do you want a
everybody.
Super Duper?
Thanks, Benny.
Yeah, he's keen. Let's go.